You can ring the bell, Sally Jo.
Oh, no. That's your job. That's your specialty. Because I was lighting the peace candles this morning, I just wanted to welcome everybody and to this wonderful, peaceful atmosphere, this place of sanctuary and beauty that we have created here, that you all have created this morning. And we're looking forward to your presence this morning. And Jamal's going to do the official opening.
That was the unofficial welcome. Now it's the official. So my dear friends, is this working, right? Yeah, okay. So such a delight to be here. Please know I guess this is a sort of a almost complete circle of love. Your presence is truly a blessing. And I'm so delighted we have Sister Bahiyaa with us. She is a long-time member of our community, a long-time friend. And she actually embodies, and of course Sally Jo will give a much larger articulation of her biography. She embodies what is called a very unique phenomena of interfaith, where you can have multiple belonging. And this is one of the fastest growing spiritual movements. So Sister Bahiyaa is both a Christian and a Muslim. Anyhow, that's a whole different story. I won't give a sermon on that. But heartfelt welcome. And I do want to say one thing. I just came back from the Bahamas, and we had a large conference there in the Shivananda. There's some seats out here. Please do. Seats out here, yeah. Please come. A large international conference of people from all over the world. And the reason I'm saying this is there was such an interest in, but how do you do interfaith services? We love the idea. So I want to reiterate again and again that this has evolved over the 2 decades, Interfaith Community Sanctuary. What I feel and what they felt at the conference was a beautiful template of interfaith services. The first Sunday, what do we have? An outside speaker that we can learn from. What did Mahatma Gandhi say? If you really want peace in a multi-religious society, you must have an appreciative understanding of the other person's faith. Second Sunday, we have universal worship. The first one was actually, if I remember, 1921 in London, honoring all the world's traditions. And just to let you know, the evolution of interfaith has gone from acknowledging different traditions to, after a few decades of some infighting, accepting different traditions, the differences, then honoring them, and lately, after 9/11, is celebrating the differences, the diversity. Okay, third Sunday is I speak, and I speak mostly about Islam. And it's interesting, in the conference in the Bahamas, next to me was this lady who is a very well-known professor, and I won't mention the school, a very reputed interfaith seminary, and she was saying, when she started talking about Islam as a religion, there were so many protests from the students and the faculty. Why should we give Islam the same amount of time as other religions? Because Islam is a violent religion. It does not accept other faiths. So she was saying, there's such a lot of misinformation. Okay, fourth Sunday, we want to involve all the members of the congregation. We believe that we are all teachers and students alike. And after the tragic passing away of my colleague Karen Lindquist, Brother George, president of our board, he has been leading the services. And from 2025, it'll be my colleague Sally Jo who'll be doing the fourth Sunday, but always with a member of the congregation. We really want to honor members of the congregation. We are all teachers and students alike. And the fifth Sunday, similarly, we have a member of our congregation speaking, and we shall involve, as you shall see today, members of the congregation. Okay, my friends, that's the end of my sermon. So now you're stating yeah, oh my God, yes. Hold this for a second.
I don't know, the bell escaped. we're,
Okay, my friends, so this doesn't start until I ring the bell, which means you're glued to your seats, as you know, till it's over. But of course, as you say, if you have call of nature, there is straight ahead of the sanctuary of release right there. Okay, here you are, getting glued now. Okay, to continue our beautiful tradition, the next one is Calling of Ancestors.
no, we're going to start with music by David Harris, who's going to bless us with some piano music, and we're very happy to have him join us today. And you can tell us what you're going to play. There's a... Why don't you say, and I'll move it back.
Okay. I'm playing Constellation Number 5 by Franz Liszt. I played this a couple of months ago, if you remember the last time I played. It's one of the same pieces.
We loved it then, and we're going to love it now. Thank you so much, David. That was beautiful. Oh, love it. I've missed you, David. David had an injury to his hand a couple of months ago, and I've been really missing his music. So I'm so happy that you're back in full form. Thank you. So we begin our services, the beginning part of our services, inviting our ancestors into the room and into the gathering. And this is a tradition we've developed over the years. And everybody thinks about ancestors in different ways, I know. We always probably start thinking about our immediate blood relatives, and we think about our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents. And in our culture, I've found in the American way of life, we tend to not think that much about our ancestors unless we had a special person in our life who gave us very special guidance or who we love very dearly and we remember. But I think that with this practice, we learn to invite all of our ancestors who go back, even ancestors we may not ever have known in real life, but their influence has come down through the ages for us and with us. And similarly, as in the Native American tradition, all our relations is a phrase that the Native American people use to talk about everything on Earth, all that is living, and even that which maybe scientists don't describe as living, but the stones and the rocks and the clouds and the atmosphere and everything that we live with and on in the planet Earth are related to us. We are all interrelated, and this is something, an understanding we're trying to develop more and more. So we'll take a moment here, and in whatever way that seems good to you, let's welcome in our ancestors and all our relations to whoever of those vast multitude of beings want to come to our gathering today. We welcome them, and we honor them, and we thank them for being here before us and for making our lives possible. We also take some time to acknowledge the land on which this sanctuary stands, and this whole city, this whole community of Seattle is built on unceded land from the Coast Salish people, particularly the different tribes of the Coast Salish tradition who lived here. And we honor the fact that they not only were here long before we came along, we, the white people and the people who took over their land, but all of the, they were here for way long. They called themselves the first peoples here on this continent, and they're still here. I have a daughter-in-law who's Native American, and my children are Native South American. And so we all believe that this legacy of our being here on this land, we have gratitude for the people who safeguarded it for us and kept it good and safe and green and true, so that in these times we can also share this land that, guess what, belongs to the Creator, to none of us personally. So we are very honored and grateful. And in this community, we also do something called pay real rent to the Duwamish tribe, which is the tribe who lived in this particular spot. And you can do that too. Anyone who wants to can join that effort of just, yes, I agree it's symbolic, but it's a very important symbolic effort to acknowledge that these folks still live here and they're still trying to survive the same way we are with all the problems that have arisen environmentally in our planet. So thank you for helping us honor our people. And then I think Jamal has a wonderful offering for the Divine Feminine. This is another, we have a little altar up here that stands for the Divine Feminine. And again, this is a concept that is evolving over the years and has continues to evolve about how we express our gratitude to the Divine Feminine, which is in each and every one of us. And Jamal has a special offering.
Thank you so much, Sally Jo. So my dear friends, in the Islamic mystical tradition, there is a song offered in honor of the Divine Feminine. Hazrati Bibi Maryam. Maryam is the Muslim name for Mary, peace be upon her, who has an entire chapter in the Quran. And Hazrati Bibi is a form of respect to Mary. Hazrati Bibi Maryam, Assalamu alaikum, peace and greetings be upon you. Then we pause, and she replies, peace and greetings be upon you. So in the mystical tradition of Islam, the first person to honor in the Divine Feminine is Mary. The second one is Asiya. Who is Asiya? The wife of the Pharaoh. Why? Because she rescued Moses from the water. And you might be surprised to know, the prophet most mentioned in the Quran is Moses. And the third one, we'll just do three, is Khadija, the beloved wife of the Prophet Muhammad, who was 15 years his senior in age. And they were married for 25 years till she passed away. Some of you know this tune. Hazrati Bibi Maryam, Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. The pause, she replies, Wa alaikum assalam. Wa alaikum assalam. Asiya. Hazrati Bibi Asiya, Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam. Wa alaikum assalam. Khadija. Hazrati Bibi Khadija, Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam. Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you, Jamal. So now I have the great pleasure and honor of introducing to us all our special guest for today, AnnHolmes Reading, Bahiyaa, we call her in our prayer group, Bahiyaa AnnHolmes Reading. And, you know, I'm going to let you read the resume, her bio in the program, because I don't like it when people read me things. Does everybody have a program? It's a beautiful bio, but I want to talk on a more personal level about my friendship with Bahiyaa Ann for a minute. Because to me, this is like the culmination of the year for me to have Bahiyaa Ann. I was so glad when I found out there was a fifth Sunday in December, and Bahiyaa's been through some very serious 2 knee surgeries in the last 6 months, and we haven't had her here in the sanctuary for a while as a result of that, although she did come to my ordination, blessings be upon her for that. But then she had the second knee, so I'm like, okay. But December 29th, it's perfect timing for her to come back and bless us with her presence. And what I want to say is, when I was working as a middle school teacher for 40 years, Ann started the Friday prayer group led by a woman, Muslim woman herself, back in 2014, and I was still working. And I could not attend from my middle school classroom, unfortunately. I probably could have, but no, that wouldn't have been so. Anyway, it started out in person here in the prayer room, and then in 2020, when COVID struck, they went on Zoom. And that was also the year I retired from my teaching position. So I have been a regular member of the prayer group, thankfully. I'm so grateful that Friday afternoon is now on my calendar, and the only thing that might interfere with it is if I'm out of town or I can't get to even if I can't get to a Zoom call, or sick in bed or something like that. But most of us attend, sometimes even when we're sick in bed, and we still lie there, and Ann welcomes us. And she says, your presence is a blessing. If you fall asleep, you're sleeping for all of us, and she thanks us. She's so welcoming, and everybody can come. One does not have to be Muslim to come. And in fact, I'm not officially a Muslim. I have never taken Shahada. But I am Muslim at heart because so much of my spiritual practices and my spiritual beliefs are based in the Muslim tradition and the Christian tradition. And Anne is, as Jamal mentioned, a Muslim and a Christian. So I go to Anne with all my secret kind of stupid Christian questions. Like the last time I was at her house, I asked her, was Paul a Jew? She said, oh, yes, Paul was a Jew. Like, I mean, that's me. I'm like, well, was he a Jew or was he like a pagan? Oh, well. Anyway, she knows everything about the Bible and all those little questions. She didn't make me feel silly at all. Anyway, I want you to know that she shares the Friday prayer group with all of the people who attend, and we become part of her conversation. And she's going to do that this morning for us after we turn off the live stream, because some people are shy about having it recorded, and we appreciate that. So toward the end, don't leave early if you can help it, because we'll have more of a conversation. And Anne Bahiyaa has been following the discernment that we follow here at ICS all year. She's been focusing on that as she gives her khutbah or her talk every Friday afternoon, and as she opens it up to the group for us to gather wisdom together. And it's been so enlightening. And so it's been opening. It opens us up to our own wisdom inside. So I'm going to let her do that for you today. I'm going to be quiet and let her go with it. Thank you and welcome, Bahiyaa Ann. And please come up here and fill in all the chairs. We don't like empty chairs. There we go. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome, Selma.
Is that good? Okay, great, great. I just need to look around before I launch. And thank you all for coming on this drizzly last Sunday of this year. And you may have noticed that when a couple of people walked in, I did a special kind of come closer, and these two women to whom I gestured are regular members of the Friday Prayer Circle, and on Friday I asked people if they could show up in person, please to do so, because as Sally Jo mentioned, that Friday Prayer Circle is a communal venture, and it has been my deep privilege and honor to be the one who gets to hold that circle. But I don't want anyone to be fooled that it is my circle. It is not my circle. And so I was welcoming Angeline and Selma in a special way because of their participation in the circle. There are others here. I mean, Susan Kingston brought me this morning. She is also part of our circle, and other people in the room have been part of our circle. Jamal obviously is part of our circle, and I didn't start the circle. Jamal and Karen did. It was years before the circle actually started. I remember Jamal talking about such a circle the need for such a circle. And so, yeah, I think I'll say, I was going to say this as sort of part of my official talk, but it's good for me to say it now. Because the way that they framed the invitation, and these words are words that I remember from Karen Lindquist specifically, and they took me for tea it was actually in December of 2013, and Karen said that part of her desire, her deep desire to start the circle, was to provide a place where the well-being of women in general, but specifically Muslim women, was centered. It was centered. And that notion of centering women, first of all, but centering Muslim women, I realized immediately when she said that, it's like, if you center the welfare of women, and Muslim women specifically, you are taking this huge step towards the healing of the world. And as I sit here on the verge of 2025, I realize how important that circle is, our circle is, in this very day and time. And so I feel as if it is a sacred trust. It is a sacred trust. And one of the assignments that Allah gave me in sending me to this world. And I need to pause here because I want to begin. One of the things I want to do this morning is just give you little tastes of what happens in our circle. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Friday prayer, Jummah prayer as it's called in Islam, in Arabic, at Friday prayer is kind of parallel to the weekly observances in other traditions, specifically Judaism and Christianity, that it is the day, it is the time when that is a kind of a sign for the community to gather. And in fact, Jummah, the word Jummah, it comes from the root meaning means gather, to gather. And one of the names of Allah is the gatherer, Al-Jami. And so it's the day when we do what we do, those Muslims who pray the traditional 5 times daily prayer on their own or in their families. It's the time when we do it together, when we're invited to do it together, that it's set aside to be the time we gather to do it. And this, for me, one of the significance of Jummah prayer is that in any group we are in at any time, I get reminded by coming to Jummah prayer that every gathering is Jummah. Every gathering is one that has been made by Al-Jami. That we are alive at this time in history is a Jumu'ah. It's a gathering. And so this is one of the kind of insights that has come to mean more and more to me this year when we've been focusing on spiritual practice. When we step back to think about what does it mean to do spiritual practice? Why do we do it? What do we think we're doing when we do it? How do we prepare to do it? What are the gifts of doing it? And so I started thinking about all of the practices that I engage in from that standpoint of, is this spiritual practice? What's going on here? And so I'm going to, so I will be kind of dropping in the next few minutes these insights. I also, well, no, I'll save that for a minute. Okay. Whew. All right. The first surah in the Quran, and in part of the two parts of our Friday prayer gathering consist of doing the prayer together. That's the second major part. The first is something that's called a khutbah, or a talk, or a sermon. You can consider it a sermon. And so the sermon is in two parts. The khutbah is in two parts, traditionally done by one person, does both parts. And traditionally, it is to begin with a passage of scripture from the Quran, a passage from the Quran. And I fall back on the first chapter of the Quran, the oft repeated 7 verses. And so I will do that today. One of the names that's given, Al-Fatiha, which is the name of this surah, it's often translated the opening, and that gets to expanded to the opening of our hearts. And since the theme for the year, making a home for the mystic heart, since that has been the theme for the year, this year in particular, it's made much sense to me always to start with Al-Fatiha. And so I will do that. First in Arabic and then in the translation that we use Friday. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. With the name of Allah, Mother House of Divine Love, Flow of Divine Love, praise belongs to you, cherisher and sustainer of the world's mother house of divine love, flow of divine love, possessor of the day of awakening. It's you we serve, and to you we turn for help. Guide us on the path to you, the direct path to you. The path of those whose hearts have stayed open to the flow of divine love, not the path of those whose anger has blocked it, or those who have turned astray. Amen. So I am going to look at my notes, and as I pull them out, I will confess, as I told Susan when she arrived at my house this morning and let me know she was there, I said, well, Allah, and one of my favorite names for Allah is the trickster, and which I was so relieved when a woman, an Arabic speaker, woman whose knowledge of the Quran I will never, ever, ever, ever approach. She is drenched in it. When I said to her, you know, my two favorite names for Allah they're not part of the 99 names and they're not in the Quran. And she said, well, what are they? And I said, trickster and show off. And she said, well, trickster is, trickster's not in the 99 names, but it's definitely in the Quran. And show off is in both the Quran and the 99 names. Which was really great. Allah was in al-makir mode, trickster mode for me, because when I went to sleep last night, putting my head on the pillow, I was thinking, what you have prepared to say is not what, there's something missing. So I made one of those dangerous prayers and said, okay, please help. And woke up this morning and was like, oh dear. So it's kind of fresh off the boat, so to speak, and so you'll be glad that I took the time to write something down so that I won't, keep us here until next week. Okay, so we're here to think about this theme that we've been looking at this year, living in this year. And I just want to do a shout out to the ministerial team here for having this wonderful way of forming community and deepening spirituality by giving us yearly themes. It's a way of connecting us to one another. And when we come here, taking each other home with us in our lives. And it's been so powerful to be in a circle where we can, week in and week out, be connected to the larger community by focusing on the theme. That's one thing. And to realize at the end of each year what's happened within us, inside of, and I'll speak personally here, inside of myself as a result of this disciplined spiritual practice of going through, methodically going through a theme. And it speaks deeply to my Christian training, and this year is 40 years of being an ordained priest in the Episcopal Church, my privileges and responsibilities were taken from me 3 years after I became a Muslim on April Fool's Day in 2009. I was defrocked. And in some ways, that the defrocking doesn't matter because the one who called me to the priesthood hasn't taken back the calling. In fact, it's more trickster action. So in that tradition, I was raised to follow sacred time. I was raised with something called a lectionary, and the whole church was reading the same scripture passages week in and week out, so that we were bound together with people in other countries around the world who were reading the same passages. And that's what the themes for spiritual discernment do here at ICS. It's that we are bound to each other, and and that in and of itself is a spiritual practice. This year's the title, when I got a little sneak preview, sometime late last year, and this title alone struck me so much. Making a home for our mystic hearts. Making a home for, and it's the two words that were most important to me were home and heart. Home and heart. So to think about spiritual practice as, I thought I turned off my phone, but apparently not. To think about spiritual practice as homemaking for the heart, homemaking for the heart, was immediately engaging. And to think about it that way, as it immediately frames it as helps me think about spiritual practice not as something I'm supposed to do, like, oh, it's time to pray. I missed that prayer. It's something totally different. It is something that that shows that we are taking on whatever sacred assignment was given to us when we were beckoned into this world. It's when we start a spiritual practice, what we're saying is, I'm in. I'm in. I'm going to do this, and I need schooling. I need schooling, and because I need to make a home for my heart, and making a home for my mystic heart means that I need to cooperate. I'm saying, yes, I'm going to cooperate with you, Allah, in making me a vessel, making me a vessel for you in the world. And it is a cooperative effort. Long before we came to this world, as I understand it, there's a story I first heard from a Sufi teacher, and he said that we are told that before we were in this world, when we were in the world before, the only thing we did was dance around the throne of Allah. That was all we did. And then when we at some level consent to coming to this world, we say yes to the assignment. We come into this world and then we run into people who for some reason we recognize. And he said, we recognize them because they were our dancing partners in the world before this one. And in a certain sense, everything that's on the planet are our dancing partners. But of course, we have these close-in dancing partners. And spiritual practice is, as I've said already, is something that we when we see these people, we know, okay, I know how to do this with them. And we are going to learn how to do this in this world together. So making a home for our mystic hearts is a cooperative practice. It's a cooperative venture, cooperating with Allah and cooperating with one another. And if we have a home in Allah, if we work on homemaking, we all become homemakers, housekeepers. To invite Allah into our hearts, and this is based on what I'm saying now is based on the saying of Muhammad, a hadith Qudsi, which is a direct revelation from Allah, although it's not in the Quran. So that's why it's called, given a different title of hadith. But and it's on your program, and it goes like this: I cannot be contained in the space of the heavens, and this is Allah speaking. I cannot be contained in the space of the earth, but I can be contained in the heart of my pure and loving servant. So we're built. We're built. Our hearts are built to hold Allah. Our hearts are built to hold Allah. But Allah doesn't force Allah's way into our hearts. That's part of the reason the angels were so kind of miffed when Allah announced the creation of humans. It's like, you are creating, oh my goodness, what are you doing? These beings, as you've described them, are going to wreak havoc. They're going to be up to all kinds of mischief because Allah gave us humans a kind of sovereignty, a choice to be in this with Allah, a choice to surrender. Surrender. We are such an interesting experiment of Allah's. It's like, oh, I think I'll do this. And what we get from another hadith Qudsi is, I was a secret treasure. I was a secret treasure, and I longed to be known. And so I created the heavens and the earth. And the extension of that, is that, yes, the heavens and the earth know Allah and surrender to Allah automatically. But Allah created us to have a choice. We can say yes, and we can say no. The choices have consequences. That's for another talk. But to have this theme of spiritual practice is like we get to say, oh yeah, I need some help here. I need some help here. So the first thing that occurred to me this morning when I woke up and said, oh, where I have to start is with surrender. And I was chuckling because that is the simplest way to translate the word Islam. Islam means surrender. And it with a small I, it's a surrender, as I understand it. Very simplified, but it is surrender to be. When I first took my shahada, when I first said the word with the intention of becoming a Muslim, I was saying it with the intention of becoming a Muslim with a small m. I wasn't thinking about joining a religion. What I realized was, oh, I'm in a situation, I have to surrender. There is no other option. I already knew about the efficacy of surrender because I am an addict in a number of ways, and I had been in 12-step fellowships for quite a while at the time. But I was in a situation where it felt too big for any 12-step fellowship. I had to just say, okay, this is my label. I am a surrendered one. From now on, I am a surrendered one. And I need to make it official, so I took my shahada and landed in definitely trickster action there. And again, another khutbah. But surrender is the beginning. It's like when we come to this world from the world before, we've already been signed up for what I call love school. Allah signs us up. But when we get here, it's whatever circumstances we're born into, we get, it's like quite an entry. We forget. We realize, oh, we don't just get to dance in front of the throne. There's other stuff that we've been called here to do something. We forget, and it takes us a while. Sometimes it can take us most of our life to figure out that there is love school, that it's a possibility, even though we were signed up. But we have a place. We have a place reserved. And so it's when I started seminary, in the first month of seminary, there is a ceremony for new students, and it's matriculation. And you sign a book. There's this big, huge book. And that was very, very, a seminary that really was loved traditions, and matriculation was a big deal, And so I remember signing the book. I had a place. I had a place. But I said, yeah, I'm here. Count me in. And so it seems to me that what I learned from Islam about, when I think about spiritual practice, is that it's a surrender. It's a surrender so that I can live into whatever it is that Allah has given me to do and become whoever it is Allah has meant for me to become in this world. The second insight that I get when I think about this theme of making a home for the mystic heart is the theme of spiritual sovereignty, something that is, people from my circle know that it's another one of my things. And it's connected to what I've said already, is that not only does Allah give us a choice about the way in which we orient ourselves toward Allah, Allah also gives us sovereignty. I mean, and sovereignty comes along with being given a choice. I come from peoples who understood, had to understand that they had that sovereignty, even though they were living in circumstances that were very much where the choices they could make about their lives were very, very limited. The legacy of enslavement, and specifically the legacy of enslavement as it has to do with this part of the world, and being of African heritage, and being stolen from ancestral lands, and then taken to colonized lands, and being treated as possessions of other people. Means you have to, the way my people survived was to remember La ilaha illallah. There is no God but God. There is no God but God. When I came into Islam, I realized, this is my spirit in my. I talk about my spiritual journey as a kind of spiritual archaeological dig. That the layer underneath my Christian faith and practice is Islam. Is Islam. We've been here before. We've been here before, and historians will say that anywhere from 30 to 60 or even more percent of enslaved Africans were Muslim. I don't, who knows? But from the inside, I know that there's truth there. I know that there's truth there. When we got here, we said, this Jesus, he's all up in Islam, and Mariam, even more. And so we weren't confused. And so that we had to reach for spiritual practice, because that was the way that was the way to remember that we had a calling that was so much more than being what they called a slave. La ilaha illallah. So spiritual practice is always about a choice. It's always about a choice. So many of us, I will say, are raised in traditions where you have to go to church, you have to be good, these are the rules. If you do this, if you do that, you're breaking the rules, you're bad, and so then you have to go confess, and expect punishment. It's like, no. One of the ways that I know that I can never not be a Christian, at least as far as I can tell anything, is that I was raised with that kind of background where I understood spiritual practice as being something that supported my sovereignty, and that I had a direct connection to God, and that's how I was taught spiritual practice, because my parents were not overtly religious, but my mother sang us to sleep at night with spirituals, and they made sure that we went to church. And my mother took us to the church. She did an investigation. She was very much a scientist, my mother, and she investigated the churches, and she found one where we could ask questions in Sunday school. And that's how we ended up Episcopalians. And what I don't think she was conscious of, but maybe she was that also that the kind of one of the markers of that tradition has to do with practice. It's liturgical practice. It's what you do in church. That's the most important thing, and doing that right, but I was taught how to pray, not so that I would trying to seek favor. I was taught to pray in a way that made it very clear that what it was about was reminding me of who I am in relationship to God. Because it was primarily about praise. It was primarily about praise and thanksgiving. So, surrender, sovereignty. And then the third point and final point, you'll be glad to know, has to do, and I'm not really sure, it was time for me to leave, but so I'm not really entirely sure of how to look at this third point. Spiritual practice, I understand that whenever we are mindful of our behavior in the world, and whenever we are doing something that involves intention, which is one of the categories that we looked at over this year, intention, and mindful of our limitations, and when we're engaging in it, and doing it for the benefit of the whole world, that we can understand that spiritual practice, if we've made a home for our mystic hearts, a home for Allah in our own mystic hearts, and we understand that we have a home in Allah, which we recognize when we surrender, that everything comes to us from the home we have in Allah. Then when we go out, quote unquote, go out into the larger world, that everything we do is spiritual practice. Everything we do can become spiritual practice. And we can go into the world seeing in other people, oh, that person is trying, That person is made with the same capacities that I have. That person is sovereign. I don't get to tell that person, hey, you don't have the right idea here. I do get to stand in my sovereignty and say, the impact of your behavior, this is what it's telling me about you. I get to stand in my sovereignty at the same time as I recognize that all of us are practicing in some way or another. And all of that I get to do from this position of surrender. Because, and I will close with this name of Allah, the name that in the later months of this year, and especially this last month in December, arose. And it's a name that Allah is the name, and it's often translated as the just. But I prefer the name the balancer, because just as when we came into this world, we got confused. I mean, I think I get more confused the older I get about the way things roll out in this world. And so, this name of Allah, of the balancer, is one of those names where it belongs to Allah and it just is. It just is. Most of the names of Allah are names that get poured out and are obvious and manifest in the world. Allah, not so much. Not so much. And so walking in the world and taking on these confusing, messy situations that we find ourselves in, where we can't see justice anywhere in it, that we need to, go back to surrender and use our sovereignty to understand that Allah is at work, constantly at work, even we can't see it. We can't tell. And continue to practice whatever we do, to practice, to support our spiritual practice, our larger spiritual practice in the world. And to continue to understand that, no, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice doesn't make perfect. There's only Allah. That's where perfection is. And so we get to live in this flow, in the flow of divine love. So part of one of the practices that is dear to me and is the practice of taking refuge in Allah. And there is a person in this room who I heard speak about this in this room, and she was talking about armor, divine armor. This is the way I remember it. This is the way I carry it. And our armor comes from seeking refuge, taking refuge in Allah. I'm looking at the person. And that is, I'm going to close with a surah that is one of a couple of surahs that's about taking refuge. And then I'll be done. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. With the name of Allah, Mother House of Divine Love, Flow of Divine Love, say, I take refuge in the cherisher and sustainer of the dawn, from the mischief that she has created, from the mischief of the darkness as it falls, from the mischief of those who work, who tie knots into our affairs, and from the mischief of those who are envious when they envy. I will close that now. Thank you.
Say something really quick here. When I was at school, my teachers always encouraged me to look for music beyond the really well-known composers like the Chopin, Bach, and Mozart, and all those guys, because history's been kind of whitewashed, and the same has kind of happened for classical music. So I kind of, through searching new types of music, I kind of gravitated towards Latin classical music, and I don't know, I really love it. This is one of the pieces I found. It's very dramatic and very melancholic, and very beautiful, and Yeah, I really like it. I hope you do too.
Thank you, David, for blessing us with that music. Do you want to say the composer's name again, just so that people out there in Wonderland can hear it too?
Yeah, it's Intermezzo by Manuel Ponce. I think it's Ponce. I think it's just pronounced Ponce.
Sounds good. Ponce, good. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful. Mexican composer. So this is the time in our service where we ask for donations from people who are able and willing to give to the community, give back to the community. We have a plate that we'll pass along. And I know that there are people out in the cyberspace who give online through our website, interfaithcommunitysanctuary.org, where there's a donate button there for people to donate. And we are deeply appreciative of all the donations that we receive that go to actually upkeep of this historic building and all the programs that we do here and that we also share in the larger community. And we also appreciate all the volunteer time, besides the treasure that people give their time and energy to making this sanctuary operate, to keeping the floodwaters down and the lights on and the heat going and all of the gardening and landscaping and cleaning that goes on every week and every time. And we appreciate all of those efforts, deeply appreciate. Thank you all. We also have some upcoming gatherings before we go into our open circle here. We want to mention that our service next Sunday is highlighted. We have the first Sunday in January will be our annual membership celebration and worship service here in the sanctuary, and then downstairs we'll have our annual guiding council annual meeting where we elect our officers. But up here in the sanctuary during the service time, we will have presentations from our ministers and officers and other people, including congregants, who will join in and help us create that Sunday service. So there's a little blurb about it in your flyer. And we hope everybody will come. And if you, by any chance, can help by bringing a little food to that meeting, it'll go into, we'll go downstairs after the service and have some time around the tables, and it would be nice to have some nourishment. So let me know by email or mention to me if you can help bring a little bit of food for our physical nourishment that day. We'll need it and we'll love it. And also today, after the service, there's coffee and tea and snacks downstairs. For everyone is welcome to join us. And in the meantime, which is a groovy time, as they used to say, we have on Wednesday is New Year's Day. Everybody knows Happy New Year coming up. And we have a special program with Imam Jamal and with myself and with Dave Brown, which is our Creating Sacred Intentions for 2025, going along very well with everything that Bahiyaa Ann has spoken with us today and that we've been working on all year. And so we invite you to that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right here in the sanctuary. And then that'll be about an hour long, and then there'll be a little reception downstairs with some soup and bread and fun things to eat and visit.
So my friends, this is a program called Creating Sacred Intentions. This has been on since 2001. Every year, it has been a very popular program. Some of you know I work with a rabbi and a pastor, and we are called the Interfaith Amigos. So every year, the Interfaith Amigos will get together and have this program. Now, Rabbi Ted Falcon has retired. Don McKenzie, the Christian pastor, has moved to Minneapolis. So I'm still here, and we have our wonderful, you want to call Sister Sally Joe, my colleague, and then we have Pastor Dave Brown from Tacoma, who's a very popular minister. In fact, he writes columns in the Seattle Times. He'll be the third person for this program. 2 o'clock, New Year's Day.
Thank you. Yes, and all are welcome. And also, Jamal is beginning a new spiritual development class in January, starting Saturday, January 11th, and it will be focused on Sacred Laughter of the Sufis, a book that he has written previously and that will be available, but also just a lot of mullah stories. And if you've been to Jamal's talks, you know he loves the mullah stories, and it will be focusing on what we can learn from those mullah stories and how they might, in fact, apply to our own mullah lives. And that will be happening every Saturday on Zoom from 10 o'clock till noon, starting January 11th and going through February 22nd. And there is 1 week off in there. But we can give you more information about that if you'd like to register for that. Just speak to myself or Jamal. And of course, now again, starting this coming week, our weekly gatherings that happen every day here throughout the week, meditation groups, study groups, people who are working on A Course in Miracles meets every Wednesday? Tuesday. And there are gatherings. The CWIS Medicine Circle, Women's Medical Circle meets. These gatherings you can find on our website, and some of them were canceled this past week because it was a holiday week, but they're back. Most of them will be back on this coming week. And you're welcome to join anything that speaks to you, that you feel, like you might be able to benefit from that gathering. And we invite you to find out more about that on the website, interfaithcommunitysanctuary.org. So if anyone has a special announcement that I might have forgotten. Okay, Janine?
Hi. We've arranged for a CPR class in 2 weeks on the 12th after the Sunday service. It lasts about 2 hours. It's free. It's presented by Medic 2, which is the community branch of Medic 1. But they're hopeful to get donations for their program. So anyway, I'm just going to leave this sign-up sheet, trying to get an idea of people who might be able to come up at the front, and I'll also send out an email for those that live locally and are online and might be interested, and you can just reply to that. It's in person, yeah. It's a hands-on program. It's a hands-only kind of CPR, but they are going to review choking and also use of an AD, and forgetting the name for it, automatic defibrillator. We don't have one, but a lot of places do. And I mean, you could always leave for that part if you didn't want to go. So that's all. Thanks. It's in 2 Sundays from now on January 12th. After the service. Oh gosh, it starts at 12.
Starts at 12, so it will. Yeah, so if you're here for the service, it'll begin after the service. Otherwise, you can come at 12. Very good. Thank you for reminding us of that, Janine. And thank you for arranging that. That was kind of you to find people who would do that for us for free. It'll also be online. All are welcome, anyone who wants to take that. So at this point, we will say goodbye to our friends online and thank them for being with us and for sharing their time with us. And we do hope to stay for a few more minutes and think about